Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill and today we have the pleasure of discussing two tremendous finals that we saw on Sunday. Borna Coric stunning Roger Federer in Halle, and Marin Cilic and Novak Djokovic playing an incredibly high-quality tennis match. Marin Cilic coming out on top of that one. So I'm going to dig my teeth into both of those matches, and then at the very end, I'm going to tell you guys why I was quoted in the New York Times this week. No time today for a top five because there's just too much to talk about. Very exciting stuff. And I don't know how you could watch those two matches and not be psyched for Wimbledon. So I want to start with Coric and Federer. And for Coric, I don't believe I've talked about him too much on this channel. And I love it when, for the first time, a younger guy forces me to talk about them for the first time. It happens with everyone. It's happened with Chung. It's happened with Zverev. And now it's Coric's time. And for me, Coric and I, let me tell you something. We go way back, so to speak. The first time I saw Borna Coric, I was sharing the court with him. It was, I believe, the 2013 U.S. Open. I was ball boying. And it was a juniors match. Might have been 2012. It was either 2012 or 2013. Coric must have been 16 or 17 years old, 17 really at the oldest, but you know, also likely he was 17, and he was playing a young American named Tommy Paul, and I remember a few things from that match. First of all, this poor American, I don't know where Tommy Paul is at these days, seemed like a really nice kid, by the way, but I haven't heard about him since. I haven't seen him since. But I was looking at Tommy Paul and I was looking at Borna Coric, and I'm like, this kid is playing a man right now. I mean, he stunned me athletically for a junior, where there is a noticeable downgrade among the juniors in strength and explosive movement. I remember Coric sliding on the hard court right in front of me, and I was astonished by what a great athlete he was as a junior. And then the second thing, I remember walking off the court and turning to a ball boy. I still remember his name. His name was Travis. And basically, we don't talk on the court at all. We don't say a word the whole match. I mean, that could be obvious, but at the same time, you don't really think about that. For 2 hours, we're just silent. And I'm watching these matches. So for the first time, I get off the court, and I can finally talk. And I turn to Travis and I say, did you see this guy's backhand? It was like Djokovic. And I remember him saying, calm down with that. Let's calm down. Well, I don't know, man. 5 years later, maybe I was right to, kind of be hyping that backhand up. That backhand is a thing of beauty. And it was, for me, the number one tactic or the number one factor, because it's not really a tactic, the number one factor that gave Roger Federer some trouble was how heavy Coric was hitting his cross-court backhand with the depth was completely absurd. The consistency in depth on Coric's cross-court backhand was akin to none other than Novak Djokovic, who we're going to talk a lot about later. But to say the least, I love, everything about Borna Coric. I love his attitude. I love how he's built as an athlete. I love his tattoo on his right arm. As we look at our thumbnail, it says, the worst thing in life is to be ordinary. I think that's a pretty cool thing to go by. And then he also says that if he wasn't a tennis player, he would be a boxer, which I think it says something about his mentality. And I just love that. You know, if you feel like you have that in your blood, if you feel like in your blood you are a fighter, I just love that, because this is a certain breed of human being, and not everyone has that in their blood. And for Coric to say, you know, if I wasn't playing tennis, I'd be fighting with my fists, I think it just says something about him. That's just me. Maybe you're like, stupid boxing, what do I care? But that's just me. I love that. I love this kid. So in the same breath, you know, Coric, he was my number one guy. He was my number one next-gen guy. I absolutely loved him, but I'm not going to lie. I think me and a lot of other people lost a lot of confidence in him, because at the end of 2015, I was so high on Coric, and his ranking towards after the U.S. Open, around that time, it was 33. And then in the same time in 2016, it was 42. So slight regression there. Then, but he did have a knee surgery to end that season. That probably set him back. He missed kind of the tail end of 2016. But then at the same time of the year in 2017, he was 56. So for a young player to be going backwards in the rankings was quite alarming. And I didn't really know what to make of it. I think that for the most part, what was really hurting him was his forehand. Because, and here's the thing, I really think it was killing him. Coric, he's strong, but the technique on his forehand, I think, I think he relies a lot on, or he used to at least, rely a little bit too much on his arms. It's a very full swing, it's a huge backswing, but he just wasn't getting much reward from that huge swing. He wasn't getting much miles per hour. He was getting a lot of topspin, but really I think it was very difficult for him to attack with his forehand. And that's a huge problem. I think that can really set you back in the modern game. Now, you'll never hear me say, oh, I think this guy could have been great, but he didn't have good volleys, so that's what set him back. I'll never say that, because you can look up and down the rankings. Tons of guys don't have good volleys. It's not uncommon. Now, in the 70s, maybe if you didn't have good volleys, then you could say that. Like, this guy, his game, his volleys are holding him back. Right now, volleys don't hold players back, but forehands do. And I really think Coric's forehand was holding him back. His backhand has always been great. He's always been a great athlete. His serve has been sort of average. I've seen him in matches make too many errors, but really the number one thing, I really think that his forehand was literally like a harness on his game and not allowing him to move forward in his game. And for some reason, I can't really pinpoint it, to be honest. I have ideas, but I'm not really confident enough in the ideas to really say them with any conviction. I think Coric's forehand is a lot better. Maybe he made it a little bit more compact. I think there's a very strong possibility that he incorporated more legs. There's a possibility that he made his grip a little bit less Western. There's also a possibility that he just changed his mindset in terms of trying to brush up on the ball and instead of hitting through the ball more. Those are all possibilities. I'm not extremely confident on any one of them. I'd love to interview him and ask him, but we can't do that right now. I do think it's unfortunate. This is completely going off on a tangent, but I'll be quick. One of my dreams, I think, is to do an interview show in tennis where I can really talk to these guys, all the time. So maybe someday, because there's not that much good interviewing in tennis, and I think it's kind of an issue. Okay, so I think it's time to talk about the match. I've done enough. I don't want to call it rambling, but I've done enough talking about Coric's game. So in the first set, it's a really close set. It's a pretty well-played set. I think that it's important context to provide that Federer, throughout the entire week, looked pretty shaky. Not his best. And he really could have lost before this match, I think. He just didn't play anyone who could make him pay for his level, which was not really at his A+ or even A minus Roger Federer level. But in the first set, it's 5-all. Federer has a break point and he hits the tape. He has a good look at a cross-court forehand pass and he hits the tape. So I think that all in all, there is the tennis gods, and I'll continue, the tennis gods were not too kind to Roger Federer in this first set, because I think he did have a lot of opportunities. That was one that sticks out, but it goes to a tiebreak, and Federer up 6-4 in the tiebreaker. This is all on him. He hits a terrible second serve. So the first set point, he gets 1 set point on his serve, and he hits the second serve right in Coric's forehand wheelhouse. Coric goes not cross court, forehand, down the line, really, really good, solid return. Federer can't return it. I think under pressure, the easiest shot to hit is a return. Not a lot of thinking, more of a reaction shot. So Federer hits a really poor second serve into Coric's forehand, and he gives up that set point. Then, on Coric's serve, a really crazy point ensues because the ball Federer hits a slice and the ball doesn't really seem to bounce much, and Coric kind of lunges for it, and then Federer hits an approach shot, and it's kind of a broken point, but ultimately Coric hits a lob and Federer hits an overhead, but it was just high enough where the ball hits the top of Federer's racket, and Federer can't really jump high enough, or the ball is too high, however you want to look at it. The ball doesn't hit Federer's sweet spot, and Coric is able to return the overhead, hit it at Federer's feet. Federer can't make the half volley. So that was kind of a crazy broken point, and at the end, the good fortune, I would say, falls, in Coric's favor, because he sort of gave up an overhead there. It was just high enough that Federer, and it wasn't a great lob, but it was kind of good enough, and Federer really just missed that overhead kind of by a centimeter. At the same time, Federer, I would, normally expect a broken point when things kind of break down, when patterns break down. I would favor Federer in those kind of points. So for Coric to, especially in a pressure situation, to come out on top in one of those points, major credit to Coric. And then, let's see, broken point, bad overhead. Okay, and then let's take a look at this set point. It's 6-7. This tiebreak is on serve here, and Federer is serving. Let's go to some footage. To me, this is like vintage Djokovic, but it's Borna Coric. So Federer hits a really good first serve here. Coric on the full stretch. Check out this return. It's so deep. You see it land right on the baseline. And then I also want to bring attention to Coric on the other side of the court. Look how athletic his stance is. I have no doubt that he got that from observing Djokovic, because no one has a more athletic split step than Novak Djokovic, but Borna Coric is very athletic in his split step. It's something that a lot of people, including me, I think can work on in their game, to pay a little bit of attention to how athletic your stance is when it comes to your split step. But Coric, just something about that split step and something about his stance right now. He looks so ready to pounce. Federer gets it to Coric's backhand. I shouldn't really say get it, because Coric's backhand is better than his forehand still. But it's somewhat short, not an awful shot, but Coric is just going to rope this backhand cross court. I talked about his backhand cross court. It lands right on the baseline once again, so Coric hits two balls with incredible depth, and Roger Federer cannot return that backhand. I believe he shanks it maybe long and wide. So that is the set for Borna Coric. Could have went either way. Federer, once again, annoyed at himself, looking not his best. Just doesn't quite have it in his feet. Sort of not, he's not in the right position for every ball. He's missing too many easy forehands, which is really the telltale sign of when Roger Federer isn't sharp. But Coric, he's an animal, and in this whole match, he's an animal. I want to reiterate that, and I'll get more to that at the end. Let's see. In the second set, Federer breaks at 3-4, and he actually falls down in that game 15-love. The point that sort of swings it is a spectacular drop shot. Federer hits a forehand drop shot. He follows it into the net. He then hits a lob volley on the full stretch and then hits a drop volley. One of these inventive Federer points where it gets his juices flowing. It makes the other player on the other side feel humiliated, like you're playing with someone who's 10 times better than you. Just that combination, drop shot, lob volley, drop volley. It's tremendous. So Federer parlays that. Coric makes two forehand errors. It's really the only time in the entire match that Coric's forehand broke down. That is the shot that would break down, but it stayed steady the entire match, except for this game. He made two forehand errors, and then the set point was something else. If you watch the match, you probably remember it. It was an awkward yet easy little tap put-away volley, although it wasn't a put-away. Coric hit the net cord, and Federer got the second set. Then in the third set, Coric breaks at 2-3. I want to show you the point at 30-all in this game. Roger Federer serving. Let's see what we got. Back to the footage here. Roger Federer serving, and here you'll see he hits another poor, this time a first serve, right into Coric's wheelhouse. I tried to draw a red dot to show you just about where that serve landed. This is so atypical for Federer. He generally, sometimes he'll get really hot and he'll serve at a high first serve percentage, but generally he has enough faith in his second serve, and his second serve is excellent, that he aims really close to the line on his first serve. It's rare that he'll have a miss like this. But in this case, he has an uncharacteristic miss, and it's an easy forehand return for Coric, and you'll see he hits it hard and deep right at Federer's feet. It's one of those half volleys that Federer has to hit on his backhand. And then look at this, Coric. Uh-oh, did that skip one? Oh no, it skipped a frame. I'm sorry about that. I messed up. I must have made a mistake there. But Federer basically hits this sort of short. Coric is going to step in, and you can't really tell from this, but he hits a backhand inside out backhand winner, and I show you where the ball lands. It was a bit of he was a little late. I don't think he was going for the very, very corner, but he hit the very, very corner, and that was the break for Coric. Coric was so much more spry in that third set, so much more explosive. Federer just simply looked weary. And Coric dominated the rest of that third set. So, huge win for him. Biggest win of his career. He's had big wins, though. I believe he's beat Nadal, and I believe he's beat Djokovic. I hope I'm not... Drop my pen again. I hope I'm not mistaken on that. But I do think he's beat those two guys. He's no stranger to playing top level tennis, but hopefully he catches up with Zverev, honestly, because eventually when it's all said and done, I don't see Zverev in terms of let's say a 15-year outlook. I don't see why Zverev is going to be better than Coric. I think that Coric has a chance to be better than Zverev even. But right now, Coric has some catching up to do. That's all. I think Coric can do it. I do have faith in that. In terms of Federer, and I want to go quickly because we have a whole nother match to go over. In terms of Federer, he traditionally, this kind of sounds funny to say, but he traditionally loses a grass court warm-up before Wimbledon. He has the last 2 years. He's won the last 2 Wimbledons. So I think that for a guy who takes 3 months off, I think it's difficult playing 2 Masters 1000s in a row. And, of course, winning the title in the first one. So it was a lot of tennis for Federer, and he did look tired. I do think there's no reason to believe he won't sharpen up. And the good thing for Federer is he doesn't really need to be at peak form come, the first week of Wimbledon or come, he doesn't like have 7 days to get back in peak form. He really has about 15 days. Because Federer, even if he's not playing his best, he's going to win in the first round, he's going to win in the second round, he's going to win in the third round. I mean, anything is possible, but it's not like a Nadal who's kind of vulnerable in the early rounds at Wimbledon. Federer is just not vulnerable in the first round. So Federer has so long to figure it out that this isn't really too big an issue for him. So now I want to move on to Djokovic and Cilic. And before I really say anything, I want to say that this is by far the most impressed I've been with Djokovic, and it doesn't even it doesn't compete with the Madrid run for me. Rome. I think that I was much more impressed with Djokovic in this tournament than Rome. I think that there were things he did in this tournament that I simply didn't see in Rome, and I spoke about it. I think that Djokovic's ball striking and his timing were tremendous in Rome. But what I didn't see was vintage Djokovic. And vintage Djokovic, to me, has to do with his court coverage, his movement, his steadiness. To me, vintage Djokovic looks like this. I want to play a video. Look at the speed where highlight the reaction, but look at the speed Djokovic comes in with. This is ridiculous.
To finish.
So that Djokovic, that version of Djokovic, is the Djokovic that overwhelms you because he's everywhere. You can't get a ball by him. And you look at him on the other side of the court and you're like, how am I supposed to win a point? He's all over the court. That is vintage Djokovic. And we will hear that term thrown out over and over and over again. Vintage Djokovic this, vintage Djokovic that. But to me, that is vintage Djokovic. And I haven't seen that until this tournament. To me, if you are going to declare Djokovic is back, this is the time to do it. It was not Rome. This would be the time to do it. Cilic is playing incredible tennis. Of course, Cilic won the match. I mean, it was unbelievable. It could have went either way. The margins were razor thin. In the first set, double faults killed Marin Cilic. He double faulted twice at 5-6. Djokovic won the first set 7-5. And then in the second set, and by the way, I'm not going to go to any footage in this. In the second set, Djokovic gives up a mini break with a double fault of his own. So double faults, margins razor thin. They played a role. But Djokovic, mind you, up a set, up a mini break in the tie break. He double faults, and then in the baseline rallies, I hesitate here because I heard the commentators criticize him for this, and I read in every article, Djokovic got a little passive. It's true. I'm not going to act like it's not true, but it's Cilic on the other end who, with the match on the line, was looking at balls that Djokovic, didn't do much with, but it was Cilic who was the one who pounced on these rally balls that Djokovic was hitting. And I think that Cilic deserves so much credit for his comeback in this second set, because other than the double fault, Djokovic really didn't give him much at all. Then in the third set, Djokovic is serving at 3-4. And this is, I'm just kind of going to the breaks. There were ebbs and flows in this match. I think that Djokovic was getting, for the most part, the better of the play for the first set and most of the second set. But then I think ever since kind of the end of the second set and the third set, I thought Cilic was playing a little bit better than Djokovic. But ultimately, a net cord at 40-30. Djokovic was serving to tie the third set at 4-all. He hits a net cord. The net cord pops straight up in the air, and Cilic puts away a forehand. Some bad luck there. They go back and forth, a few deuces. And then at deuce, Marin Cilic hits this incredible, and I am going to show you this one, this incredible forehand pass. It's the shot of the tournament, without a doubt. And I'm not going to go full screen here because I'm a little bit nervous about doing that with copyright. But you'll see on this replay, Cilic on the dead run. I mean, this is just an incredible shot by Marin Cilic. Is the sound on? Yes, it is.
Djokovic has done everything right, and it's been a match where sometimes that still hasn't been enough.
So that shot sets up break point, and then a backhand error by Novak. Djokovic was so steady in this match, but in that case, he gave one away. But you really can't complain. Cilic, the best tennis of his life, and it's time that we start, giving him the respect he deserves. I was saying that going into the French Open. He's on such a great run. He's had such a great 12 months, really. If you really look at things, he's been so consistent. I think the thing I marvel about with Cilic, for a big man, always in the right position to hit a shot. His footwork for his size is off the hook. He always gets the ball in that strike zone. And I don't even really love the technique off his ground strokes that much, but I think that because his footwork is so good, he's always able to get the ball in the strike zone. That's why he's able to dominate with his ball striking. What I do love the technique on is his serve. The ball toss is a perfect height. The knee bend is perfect. The extension is perfect. The way he hits, he can hit it flat. He can hit it kick. He can hit it slice. It's hard to read. I love Marin Cilic's serve. I love the technique and everything about it. So on a grass court, this guy's a top contender. The only thing that holds Cilic back is I don't trust him in a really big match, in a really big point. I don't trust him not to make a simple mistake. I don't trust him not to dump an easy backhand into the net. That tremendous footwork I'm talking about, those feet can get stuck in the mud in a big situation. Normally, when I'm breaking down a big Marin Cilic loss when he loses, or a big Marin Cilic match when he loses, I'm showing you big points where Cilic's feet stop moving. And like I said, I don't think he's the most flexible guy in terms of, you know, when you get him out of his comfort zone from a ball striking perspective, and then he's not dominant. But when he's able to get in the right position to hit a shot, he's incredible. The only way to beat him is to get him moving right now. It's the only way to beat him. And to do that, you need to return impeccably well. So I love Cilic. I think he's got a nerves problem. I think he always has. Or I don't know if he always has, but certainly in recent memory he has. So that's sort of my issue there. All right. Let me think if there's anything else. Yeah, so Djokovic, just to be clear, the steadiness, the movement, the court coverage combined with the ball striking, it's the best I've seen. I'm really, really high on his level. If I'm going to nitpick with Djokovic, I still think he looks miserable on the court sometimes. I think in the semifinal, looked miserable. So I don't know what that's about. I showed you the reaction when he won that point. I think that was in Rome against Nadal. That Djokovic still isn't really showing up, but against Cilic, it was pretty good. His demeanor was pretty good. In fact, I remember it was early in the third set, and he hit a backhand winner. It was either, I think he was down 15-30, backhand winner down the line. It was the kind of point where it wasn't set point, it wasn't break point, but Djokovic recognized how important a point it was, hit a winner, and he yelled. And he showed positive emotion, and he let Cilic hear him. And that's what I want from Djokovic. That is what I've rarely seen. I've rarely seen him recognize a big point in a moment where it's not blatantly obvious that it's a big point, and send a message across the court. That is something that Nadal does, that even Federer will do. Even Federer will pick his spots and be selective, but Federer will do that. Murray will certainly do that, and Djokovic used to do it more than anyone, and he completely stopped in the last year. And it's good to see that sort of coming back, but once again, I don't know. There's a lot of talk about Djokovic finding his happy place. He still looks miserable sometimes, but I would say the last thing I'll say about this match is the level that these two were at. This looked like, and I can't say the same about Federer and Coric really, this looked like a quarterfinal, semifinal, maybe even final match at Wimbledon. That's the kind of form that these two guys were in. Okay, so guys, I was quoted in the New York Times this week. I was interviewed by Ben Rothenberg, who people have strong opinions on. I know. I might interview him one time. We'll see what happens with that. But I was interviewed by Ben Rothenberg because there was news this week about the U.S. Open. And as you know, or as you may have just learned at the beginning of this podcast, if you didn't already know, I was a U.S. Open ball boy. And the breaking news this week was this: U.S. Open ball boys and ball girls must roll, not throw. The U.S. Open used to be the only major in tennis where the ball people threw the ball across the court. We did not roll the ball. And I'm not really sure why that was, but I liked it. It was cool. It was distinct, and I can't put my finger on it, but there's something more New York and U.S. Open about throwing the ball versus rolling the ball. Rolling the ball is a little bit more tidy, but let's face it, the U.S. Open isn't tidy. There's a buzz in Arthur Ashe. There's loud music playing. It's not tidy. Wimbledon is tidy. U.S. Open isn't tidy. So something about it felt U.S. Open, and it was distinctive. And any time a major is distinctive, in my opinion, that's good. So I was interviewed in the New York Times about this. And let me try to pull this up. Where are we? There we are. I will show you my quote now in paper form. I said, that was part of the U.S. Open's identity. If Wimbledon took away strawberries and cream, would the tournament fall apart? No, but it would lose one of its defining characteristics. Gross admitted that throwing the balls was trickier than it looked. Quote, it's pretty difficult to throw on the money every time, so there's certainly a pride factor when watching ball people roll the ball at other tournaments. There was a sense that we kind of had a special skill that they didn't necessarily have. And I got actually, a lot of people made fun of me for saying that it was a hard throw. Here's why it's a hard throw, people. If you've ever held a tennis ball in your hands, you'll know that it was very light. Now, to throw a football or a baseball the length of a tennis court, and these are also very long, deep tennis courts, the baselines, or not the actual baselines, but the space behind the baselines, to throw a baseball or a football that distance will be very, very easy. But since tennis balls are so light, it is a lot more difficult, especially with wind on the outer court. So that's why it's sort of a difficult throw. But anyway, that's my stance on it. And then the other thing is, first of all, the purpose of this, the reason they changed it is because, in my opinion, they want to be able to have more women play in the back of the court, because it was harder for them to find women who were able to make the throw. There were women who make the throw, but less of them than men. I think that they wanted to equal it out a little bit more, and by doing this, they do give women a better opportunity to play in the back of the court. At the same time, there will be more politics that determines which ball people get better courts, because it takes less skill to roll the balls, and that I've talked to many ball people, and most of them are not happy about that. I just think, from my perspective, I'm not a ball person anymore, so I'm kind of removed from it. I do think that when you take away characteristics that are unique to a major, I think no matter what, you take away from the major. That's all we have for today, folks. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe when the Wimbledon draw comes out. That is when I will see you next time.